would hopefully produce a better outcome to the community, because all of this is hopefully about building trust. And one of the best ways to build trust is to be honest. And I will be honest with you that some of the information I got back on the prosecutor's office, we were disappointed because we thought we were doing better. And it was a really good opportunity for us to do some self-evaluation and say there are things that we can do differently and better that can hopefully produce better outcomes. And so I'm incredibly grateful for our friends at Vera who are willing to help us out. But tonight's event could not take place without my friends here at Olivet. We feel very fortunate to have a partnership and a friendship with Dr. Wayne Moore. He's always willing to open up his facilities, so we're in a position to have these conversations. And so the way it's going to go today, Meg and I are going to walk through some of these slides, share some information with you, and then we have a number of distinguished guests here who are going to share their perspective on these interactions between law enforcement and the community, and always appreciate having community input as well. Just so I'm sure I'm going to miss people, but I think it's important to note we have more sitting presidents here than just about any other organization could possibly imagine. My good friend Dr. Wayne Moore is president of the Baptist Ministers Alliance. We have Dr. David Green, who's president of the Concerned Clergy. Where's the president of the IMA? Where's Dr. Rushko? There he is right there. And my good friend Dr. Clyde Posley in the background, or sitting in the back there as well. And so there's a lot of people from the community who have really valuable perspectives on this issue, and they've been kind enough and they agreed that they would be willing to kind of share their perspective at the conclusion of the slideshow. But first, I think it's important to acknowledge and celebrate my good friend, Dr. Wayne Moore.
I'm happy to have all of you here. I'm always, I always say this because I was taught as a child to always be in the prosecutor presence along with Dr. David Green, because I work with them. They're the only ones in the city that allow me to work with them, and I'm just excited about that, and I want to thank them. But this is a great opportunity to go inside of the prosecutor's office. And I think this is the first time that I've ever seen something like this happen, to where the community can talk with the prosecutor, talk with those who have helped the prosecutor, look on the outside as well as the inside of his office. Most administrative arms will allow people to come in and look, but they won't give you what you really need, like the DOJ here with the IMPD. We haven't heard anything from that yet. But we knew about this, Dr. Green and myself knew about this particular situation, and I'm excited that it's coming to the community, and we're doing it on the far west side. I want to thank all of you for coming and being with us, but I think this is going to be a great groundbreaking moment for the prosecutor's office and the community. So I want to thank you and your staff, all of you. Could his staff, he's not going to ask you, but I'm going to ask, could y'all stand up? I want to see who you are. And I want you all to know that you're not above being prosecuted by the prosecutor either. Just want to, amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. Well, so when we started this conversation, we candidly did not have the capacity to do a real in-depth analysis in terms of taking a hard look at all of our resisting law enforcement cases. And we needed to partner with an outside organization who would be willing to help us take on that challenge. And we found an incredible partner in the Vera Institute and Meg, who has been really working with us over the last couple of years to get us this information and data. It was important to us that we have an outside organization. We gave them access to everything. Hey, you can look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. You get to see it all and kind of tell us how we're doing. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Meg to introduce herself and the work that they're doing at the Vera Institute.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Megan Nyack. I'm the Associate Director of the Reshaping Prosecution Program at the Vera Institute of Justice. We are so just thankful that you're allowing us to be in community with you today to share this information. Some background on the Vera Institute. We are a nonprofit organization based out of New York City in Brooklyn that works with different government actors around the country to reform the criminal legal system and the immigration system. I work at the Reshaping Prosecution Program, and so we work specifically with prosecutors around the country to help them put programs into place that center race equity and public safety. And so part of the work that we do is this data analysis. We have amazing data scientists and researchers who pull the data and do a lot of analysis on it to be able to get us to this place where we can look at the data and understand what the trends are in a community. And the very specific things that we look at are, what are the top charges that a prosecutor's office is prosecuting, meaning like the top 10 charges, so to speak. And then also, what are the racial disparities that exist within those charges? And are there specific charges that we see higher racial disparities in? And so that's what brought us to where we are today, to be able to be here to talk to you about resisting arrest.
These are your stats, so I'll let you talk.
Oh, great. So, national landscape. As I said, we work with offices around the country, and so when we looked at the data, we wanted to look at it not in a vacuum, but in a comparison with some other jurisdictions. And so this is resisting arrest cases per 100,000 residents for 4 different jurisdictions around the country. And my researchers want me to be very clear that the reason we do this resisting arrest cases per 100,000 residents is so that we can account for population size and make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. And so also when we say resisting arrest cases, what we mean is a charge where resisting arrest is the most serious charge that somebody is charged with. So there may be cases where there is a more serious felony charge and a resisting arrest. Those aren't the cases that we're talking about. The cases that we're specifically looking at are those that where resisting arrest is the highest level charge that somebody has. And so if you look here, this is just 4 different jurisdictions around the country, and here's their misdemeanor resisting, 7 charges per 100,000 residents and 7.68 in the felonies. Some of these, there's no misdemeanors, fairly small numbers. And so then when we look at Marion, this is Marion County. And so 18.77 per 100,000 residents for misdemeanors and 11 for felonies. And so when we compare across the different jurisdictions that we work in, what we're seeing is that Marion County is a big outlier on resisting arrest charges. And that's what led us to dig a little deeper and talk to DA Mears about how this is impacting your community.
And so one of the things that resonates with everybody is we're only looking at cases where resisting law enforcement is the lead charge. And the reason that we're doing that is because so oftentimes these crimes, there's not necessarily anything illegal going on at that moment in time. It is a simple interaction between someone in the community and law enforcement, and things go sideways and someone ends up charged with a crime. And so, you know, what kind of brought us to look at this is we unfortunately had seen some tragic situations where those interactions ended with someone losing their life, where someone was calling for help and then maybe someone lost their life. Someone was calling for help and the end result was someone was seriously injured because of what took place during the course of that interaction. And so it was really important for us to really get to the bottom of this issue. But there's a bigger conversation, and one of the things that I want to make sure that we're clear with everybody on is that when we talk about resisting law enforcement in the state of Indiana, one of the reasons that contributes to that big discrepancy is the fact that a lot of things in the state of Indiana can be considered resisting law enforcement. Our statutes are incredibly broad, they're incredibly ambiguous, and it really allows for the officer to have a lot of discretion to charge or arrest someone with a resisting law enforcement charge that maybe doesn't exist in other jurisdictions. And to talk a little bit more about that, Dan Cicchini is going to share with us his thoughts or share with us a little overview of resisting law enforcement. Give it up for Dan.
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone tonight. My name is Dan Cicchini. I work as the Chief Trial Deputy at the Prosecutor's Office, so I work for the big guy. A quick overview of resisting law enforcement, as Ryan was saying, it can be really minor. The law in the state of Indiana is super difficult in terms of police accountability, because if a police officer puts his or her hand on your arm and you clench your fist, the Indiana Court of Appeals has said you have just committed a crime. You have just committed a misdemeanor and you can go to jail for that. I used to be a public defender for several years, and I worked on a case where I defended a man who had been in a fight because someone called him a racial slur. When the police arrived, he looked at the police. They told him to get on the ground. He did not. He put his hands like this. He didn't strike anybody. He didn't physically contact the police. He didn't do anything wrong. And then they tased him. And not only was he convicted of that after a trial, but the Court of Appeals says that that was resisting law enforcement. And resisting law enforcement can be much more serious. Resisting law enforcement can include getting in a car and driving at 100 miles an hour through the streets of Indianapolis or somewhere else, and that's a very serious crime. But it takes very little to run afoul of the police. Lately, my practice has included prosecuting the police. You probably remember back in 2020 when we had some unrest here in the city, and on the heels of that, there were two young women who were pretty seriously beaten by the police with batons, and it was difficult to watch, and it was difficult to see, and unfortunately, it was really difficult to prosecute. But we're going to keep doing that because it's important to hold the police accountable. So it's a huge range of conduct that can get you in trouble with the police. It can be incredibly minor, it can be incredibly serious, but that's kind of what we're dealing with. It can be very, very minimal interaction with a law enforcement officer where someone can get arrested like this.
And the reality is that this doesn't exist just in Marion County. It exists in other jurisdictions, and there are other areas where this is a challenge. But I want to dig a little bit deeper into some of the information that's out there. Or no, let's talk about other jurisdictions. So one of the things one of the reports that I think everybody should take a look at is the Department of Justice evaluated the Louisville Police Department after the situation with Breonna Taylor. And they took a hard look at all of the resisting that says, we found that officers routinely use force Officers use force simply because people do not.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. This is a sound check.
Retaliate against those challenging their authority. And it's unfortunate, but I think that quote that's taken from that DOJ report very much applies.
Hey, Cindy.
Hey, good evening there, Rita. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing fine. I'm doing a remote tonight.
Okay.
All right, so you'll hear some background noise, but we should be okay.
All right, well, let's get started.
All right, thank you.
Glad you're feeling better.
Oh,
Okay.
I am. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Here we go.
At that point in time, the officers would go hands-on. And those are the types of situations that I think are things that we can really clean up and improve that relationship.
Well, welcome to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. I'm Reverend Tony Alexander, and I'm glad to be with you on this evening. This evening, we are having a special broadcast as we are going to be remote. We're at the Olivet Missionary Baptist Church on the west side of town on 4141 North High School Road, and we are here with Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Mears, and he's giving us a community conversation and updating us on use of force. So we're just going to get right in as Prosecutor Mears and his staff is giving us an update, and we'll come back here shortly.
And we looked at the race of the people that were charged with these charges. And so when we did that, we went back to 2020 and up to 2023, and we see that there are large racial disparities in resisting arrest charges. And so the darker red color is black people, this blue is Hispanic, and the peach color, I guess, is white folks. And we see actually an increase as well over the years. So in 2020, if a black person was 3.48 times more likely to be arrested for a resisting arrest charge than a white person, but by the time we get to 2023, it's 4.41 times more likely. And so we're seeing this trend not only continue over the years, but increase.
So I think one of the questions and one of the challenges that we're going to have today that we're going to save for that discussion is why do you think resisting arrest can sometimes lead to racially disparate outcomes? And that's a question that I just want everybody to think about and ponder until we get to the end of the slideshow. But we see very clearly that there's a huge disproportionate impact on people of color who are more likely to be arrested and more likely to be charged. And why is that? And what are some of the things that we can do to try to eliminate some of those discrepancies and try to do something to address that disparity that exists? Because one of the things that does is it severely undermines everybody's credibility in the community. And that's something that I think we cannot lose sight of. Here's another quote that I love that's from the same report, and it says, "Discriminatory policing may undermine efforts to solve serious violent crime. Law enforcement experts have linked the ability to solve crimes to community members' willingness to share information, and community members are more likely to cooperate when they trust the police." And that's just the reality. And we see it every day here in Marion County. And if we're going to ask people, we ask a lot of the community. We ask a ton of the community in the criminal justice system. And when we make those asks, we have to make sure we're living up to our end of the bargain. And there are people in this community who rightfully feel like the criminal justice system hasn't always treated them fairly, hasn't always treated their family fairly, and they're right. And so number one, we have to be willing to acknowledge that, but we also have to be focused on this issue of trust, because people aren't going to tell you about the bad things that happened if they don't trust you. And that's what we're working to try to build even here today by us pointing out we haven't necessarily done a great job on some of these issues. And we have to acknowledge that these disparities exist, and then we have to have practical solutions that are hopefully going to make this better. But building trust should be at the forefront of all of our minds. If we are fortunate enough to be in a position of leadership, how can we help build that trust in the community so people are going to trust us with information about that homicide or about that robbery case? And so there's a lot of talk about, hey, we need to make sure we're holding people accountable, but just as important is making sure that people are treated fairly, because if people are treated fairly, they're going to be willing to trust you when that incident occurs. So Vera came to me with this data, and certainly you have to acknowledge that we weren't doing a good enough job, and we couldn't continue to do things the way we were doing it when we saw this information. And so we thought to ourselves, what are some changes that we could make that would potentially reduce some of these racial disparities? And so we took a really hard look at our resist cases when they came into the prosecutor's office. One of the biggest changes that we made is the way we process resist cases. Before, we would file resist cases based only on the probable cause affidavit. The probable cause affidavit is the police officer's report that's submitted to our office. We were no longer just relying on that report. What we decided to do is we're now going to make sure that we watch all of the body camera video, that we're going to take a really close look at the body camera video and get a better idea of what exactly took place and what does this body camera video show us. That was really important to us, and that really helped us gain a better understanding of what was actually going on. This was not really possible up until probably a couple years, maybe a year and a half ago, because we didn't have access to the body camera video system. Now that we do, it's enabled us to more quickly review those materials, match it up with the probable cause affidavit, match it up with the police report, and say, okay, this is something that we think is appropriate to file, or hey, this doesn't really necessarily add up to what we're seeing on the report. So, and this kind of just is kind of a process map of what happens. So when arrests occur, IMPD sends us a report, a probable cause affidavit about what took place. We then have the opportunity to make that determination. Do we want to decline the filing? It's called declination. Are we not going to file the case? Or we can make the decision to file the case, and then we have, we go to a pretrial conference, and then our options are we can go to trial on it, there can be a diversion, we can enter into a plea agreement, or the case can be dismissed. One of the things that we tried to do is, if we didn't think, when we had access to that body camera footage, is we thought it was really important that we not file those cases. When it didn't necessarily add up to what was in the probable cause affidavit, we're not filing those cases. And the reason we're doing that is it is an incredible burden on people when you involve them in the criminal justice system. People have to take off from work, people miss work, people lose out on different opportunities, and it's also a very stressful time in people's life when they have that uncertainty of that case hanging over their head. And so if we do a better job on the front end of evaluating those cases, hopefully we're going to make sure that the people who are in the criminal justice system are the people who need to be there. I will tell you, we don't always get it right. We're certainly not perfect, but a more thorough review of these cases has led to less charges being filed. And I'll turn it over to Vera.
Thanks. And so we were able to kind of track the data after Ryan had changed and made the decision to start watching those body cams for every single case. And so what we see here is the declinations, when the office decides we're not going to pursue this case, are going up. As soon as we see, it starts in Q2 of 2024. As soon as they started watching the body cams, the people who are screening those cases and watching those body cams are realizing this is not something that we should be charging or pursuing. And so we see the declinations go up, and so all resisting arrest cases filed, so what that means is the ones that were actually filed, these are the raw numbers, it's not the per 100,000. So this is just in Q1, there were 325 cases filed on resisting arrest. They started watching the body cams, it went down to 270. And then the next quarter, it went down to 241, and the next quarter, 231. So over the course of a year, almost 100 cases less than had previously been. And so that's 100 people who aren't coming into contact with the system unnecessarily, but it's also hundreds of hours of prosecutor time that they can use to focus on serious cases that you want your prosecutors to be focusing on. And so this is progress, and it's exciting to see. Obviously, there's more to be done, and Vera will continue to partner with the office to keep tracking this data and be able to continue to evaluate whether these are continuing to go down and whether the racial disparities are being impacted by that.
And so one of the things that I think is really important when we present this data is to make sure that the community always has an opportunity to have input and to offer their perspective. And so I'd like to start with President of the Concerned Clergy, Dr. David Green, and start the conversation with you with what the question that we posed is from your viewpoint, from your vantage point, from what you see in the community, why do you think there are such stark racial disparities as it relates to who's arrested on resisting law enforcement, who's charged with resisting law enforcement, and maybe suggestions that you have to both law enforcement and the prosecutor's office about things that we can do to address these challenges? Give it up for the president.
Thank you, Prosecutor Mears. That was a loaded question right there. But first of all, thank you for sharing the data that we just saw, going specifically to the question of why such a disparity. I think it starts with the police doesn't look like the community it polices. I think that's part of the challenge you're going to have if you have officers who maybe never even lived in Marion County, dealt with black people, but policing black people. Because black people can be loud, we can talk with our hands, we can do a lot of that. And if you're not careful, you're not used to that, then you can call that resisting almost. And then sometimes we'll push back and say, why are you stopping me, etc. So I think those things contribute to resisting arrest when you don't understand the culture of the people that are talking. And I think this just epitomizes and shows that we have a lot of work to do on multiple levels, certainly in law enforcement, in the community as well, because we ultimately have to get to having a police department that values diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so if you don't really value DEI, you haven't been around black people, you ain't been around somebody loud, you haven't been around somebody who talks with their hands, we probably going to have a bad experience, at least in their view. And that's why I think you see people who, when they look at the video, they be like, well, that ain't that deep, And so I would encourage you, while the people watching that video, make sure they're diverse, that we don't end up with just an all-white group looking at those videos. but I like to have some diversity in people that are reviewing the video to make sure that it gets a fair shake. Somebody's used to different people and how they communicate. All right.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me bring up another president, Dr. Rush. Give it up for this president, too.
Y'all didn't clap for me. Y'all better be clapping for me. Ain't nobody playing. Thank you, Brother Prosecutor, and thank you, Pastor Moore, and all the rest of the presidents. The question is loaded, but the question is apropos. On my way here today, I stopped by my TV, and I happened to see CNN interview of Greg Abbott. Had a storm come through Texas and killed 119 people. 170 haven't been found, and ain't nobody been found since Saturday. And they said, Mr. Governor, why wasn't the alarm sounding? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? He said, it's like a football game. You win some and you lose some, and only the losers are criticizing. None of us are guilty. That's what Greg Abbott said. But Pastor Green, it happened in Texas 5 years ago. So this is the redo. The juxtaposition is this young man named Brandon Scott, 45 years old, from Baltimore. He had an issue with violence and all that going on in this city. I also want to point out, a part of this answer is the way the press looks at us. They look at your white skin differently than they look at my white skin. 5 black people got killed in and around downtown Indianapolis, and it's all over the place. 300 white folks killed, and the governor come out and said, ain't nobody responsible. It's like a football game. And so he minimizes that. But let me just tell you how Mr. Brandon Scott, he looked at his whole situation in Baltimore and said, now I'm going to do something about it. So what he did was invested 42 summer youth camps, 29 literacy programs, extended the rec hour to 11 p.m., planned block parties, opened the pools for safe fun, and crime went down 62%. You got to get people that care. When you do that same juxtaposition here, and we start talking about, come on, you black pastors, get on TLC and get on all the other things. Tell us what we're going to do with these black kids downtown. Well, what you going to do with the white kids on Mass Avenue and Broad Ripple and those other places? And if you do the curfew, make it across the board, and let the object not be because y'all going to have the WNBA game and you don't want to be embarrassed. Let the object be the babies. Let's get the babies where they need to be. Brandon Scott has shown us that we can get this done. Now, you got another little problem that you haven't placed on there. And the reason that you got the problem is you're the prosecutor of Marion County. But if you get off the airplane at Indianapolis Airport, you got to go through Claremont, Speedway, Southport, Birchville, IMPD, the state police, the Capital City Police, the Broad Ripple Rockets Police. You got to go through all of those, and every one of them police differently. And even if we get a Molly Dodger right here and put him off of IMPD, he goes and get a job over there. So we talked to all the policemen. He said, all y'all get out. Call them all, and we talked about it. Said, quit hiring people that we got fired over here. And so I love what you're doing, and I love your approach. I just remember not long ago from your office when a bail bondman climbed up in around 29th Street and shot a black man in the face and blew his head off. And the prosecutor's office wouldn't do nothing to him. So what we simply did was call a press conference, just didn't tell the prosecutor we're going to do it. And when we got to the prosecutor's office, said, I'd like to speak to the prosecutor. He said, I'm not available. I said, yeah, that's it, he ain't available. And we skinned him alive for that. Things have changed with you. And I appreciate that. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you bringing us all here. We got a big job. We got to do it all together. Deuces, gotta go.
Dr. Paisley?
Oh, hey, I want to thank my secretary and my treasurer, Alan May Washington. Go ahead, Sue.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. Can you? Who are you pointing to? Who are you pointing to?
You're the grand finale, Pastor Moore.
Okay. So, can you restate the question? What is it? What was your concern? What was your question directed
The
to?
racial disparities as it relates to resisting law enforcement cases. Why do they exist?
Right. I just, and I want to be brief because I just was sitting back there thinking about some statements that were made. But, you know, I think it's the overall narrative of, in the predominant culture of policemen, they're thinking about black men. There's a book written some time ago about the assassination of the black male skin. And if a narrative exists pre-academy training that is not addressed or taught against in the academy, then you have what was learned in the academy marinating and mixing with a narrative that was brought to the academy by some men who may not even believe that they're racist. And so then they interact, and that mixture, predisposition, which we know creates implied bias, and then it's not addressed properly in the academy, then you have that mixture makes it impossible for the most valuable thing to happen in an interaction between police, a relationship. Because the most precious commodity we have as humans in any interaction is relationship. So if the person with authority comes to any situation not seeking to have a relationship with whoever they're about to interact with, then we have a caste system that is now in law enforcement. Martin Luther King called it, it's the rich avoiding the untouchables. And so I think that's what is producing so many, I mean, the analytics prove the point. I think that is part of what's creating so many. That there is not the instruction in the academy that, look, policing is not dogs chasing cats or cats chasing dogs. It is two humans, who are interacting, both desiring to go home. And you have to approach a situation like, I want a relationship with you that ends in the law being kept without a death, or the law being kept without violence. And so I think the place, and Matthew, we can talk about this another time, but I think the place that this has to morph into from the great work you all are doing is into the academy. And then it needs to be taught and ingrained. If you can ingrain guys who have never shot a gun how to become marksmen, you can teach individuals who have never known a life that it is wrong and has no place in law enforcement. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Dr. Moore and Mr. Prosecutor and everybody else.
Well, Well, we're getting ready to take our first commercial break as we are in the midst of our community conversation with Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Mears. We're having a great dialogue, but we have to go to our first commercial break, and we'll do that. And when we return, we'll pick up our community conversation.
Never dealt with diversity, and all of a sudden they're in a position. And I have a card in my wallet that says I shouldn't go through metal detectors or be wanded. And every time I go any place where I have to go or they want me to go through a metal detector, I immediately say, I need to be patted down. Well, immediately people start telling me, well, we can wind you from the waist down. You're not gonna wind me anywhere. And that's the way I say it, and it's not meant to be offensive, it's meant to be factual. I'm not going through a metal detector, and I'm not gonna let you wind me. Real case, I went to the Justice Center, and I explained to the guy, I put my stuff in the tub, and they sent it through, and I'm explaining, and he kept explaining to him that metal detector, nor can you wind me. And so another guy comes over, he was Hispanic, and he said, what's the problem? And he was elevating his voice, and I said, there's no problem. I said, I'm just explaining to this man that I can't go through the metal detector and you can't wind me. Well, I can wind you, I'm certified. I said, sir, and I'm talking to him just like this. I said, sir, you're not gonna wind me. I said, you need to read my card. And here's what he said to me. I don't care what's on your card. And I said to him, I don't care that you don't care what's on my card. And he started to escalate this thing. And I'm going to just be honest with what I said to him. I said, maybe I need to call the mayor. Now, I don't have the mayor's telephone number, but it sounded good. And he immediately brought it down. Immediately. And here's what he said to me. He said, well, I'm going to do it this time. I said, you're going to do it every time. Now, I spoke with, I'm trying to think of what I'd call it, just the fact that I need to defend myself. And I think part of the problem is that when people start to defend themselves, people want to exercise their authority, and it escalates. It escalates. After I left, I went home, I called the sheriff's office, and I asked to speak to the sheriff, not a sheriff. And they said, well, he's not here. And I said, well, I need to talk to him. And the lady just kept telling me he's not here. She said, I'll take your number. And so she finally put me through to an officer that I just happened to know. And he asked me, he said, well, what's the problem, Reverend Bates? That's what he said. And I explained it to him. He said, let me get back with you. He called me about 2 hours later, and he said, it will never happen again. He said, if it does, here's my telephone number. Call me personally. What am I really trying to say? I'm saying that we have people who are in power that misuse that power. That's my personal opinion, because they feel like, and I'm just going to keep it real, they feel like when they look at you and you're black and they're white, not all of them, I'm not going to paint everybody with the same brush, but some people, we do know that the police department came from slavery. Thank you.
So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Vera is here, and they would love to continue this conversation, and they're doing a lot of focus group work around some of the information here, but also want to hear people's perspectives so it can better inform what the prosecutor's office does, potentially what the police department does. And so if for those of you who are available, we'd love for you to stick around and share in that conversation with us. But before we go, I have to turn it up to our incredibly gracious host, who's been with us all night.
Well, we're going to go to our commercial break here at the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. We've been listening to a forum with Prosecutor Ryan Mears, and they are about to wrap it up and have more conversation. But we're going to go to our commercial break. We'll see you on the other side of our break.
Before the celebration begins, we come together in spirit and unity. Join us for the IBE Ecumenical Service, kicking off the Indiana Black Expo Summer Celebration with praise.
You have a police structure that has not changed in 60 years. The indoctrination of police in Indianapolis and the main thing is that the most recent thing is that they have created the atmosphere. It's the community or us against them. That's not how a community ought to be. Law enforcement ought to seek proper policing, not just authoritative policing, but proper policing is when the community is involved in making sure that they're working together to bring down the solvability rate, to give conversation to prosecutor on cases. Those are the kind of things that need to take place. We don't have that in the city of Indianapolis, and you have not had it for years. And if you've been around like I have, you'll find out that the structure of policing in Indianapolis has never changed in my 39 years of life.
Plus one or two. Well, again, thank you to everybody. Vera, do you want to have the last word here?
I'm just going to plug research one more time. We have an amazing researcher here, Nico Montano. He's over there. And we want to hear from you. So if you have time today, Nico is going to find a spot somewhere in the room and do a little focus group right now. But if you don't have time today, you can email Nico or do this QR code and set up a Zoom interview, or he's also available tomorrow live and in person if you are available tomorrow. And so we want to continue to be in partnership with the community and the prosecutor's office to continue to work on this issue. And part of that, we believe very firmly, is research. So if you have time, we would love it if you would just... Already working on it. So we have a report that we're writing up that our research department is reviewing to make sure we got all the numbers perfect. And as soon as we have that, we'll pass it on to DA Mears and he can pass it on to all of you.
It's 7:29. We got it done in an hour. Thank you. Reverend Alexander, do I give this to you? Okay.
Well, welcome back to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. I'm Reverend Tony Alexander, and we're going to have a little conversation. I'm going to invite our president, Pastor David W. Green Sr., to come in. Pastor Green, if you can grab that mic that they were using and then come on and join me. They're just wrapping up. We're going to try to cut down on some of the conversation that is going on there. But what we were just listening to is there is a report that the Marion County prosecutor has come out with, and what the Marion County prosecutor has done is shared that information with the community. And in sharing that information with the community, it has highlighted that we have we got to turn that off, don't we? It has highlighted that there has been a disparity. There's been a disparity in how black individuals are pulled over in comparison to white. When you're looking at some of the things such as what was discussed on tonight, just like they started out the conversation on today, Mr. President. They were talking about pulling people over and resisting arrest. So they started it out with resisting arrest and why it is that those numbers are going up so high. But they found out that what they were able to do is when they looked at those resisting arrest cases and then they actually viewed the body cam footage, they were able to actually lower those amount of cases. So now we didn't have that going on. So that was one of the items that was mentioned. And I know it's something that a lot of black folks certainly are dealing with when it comes to use of force. And now we're seeing that there's at least going to be some action in regards to that. So let's go ahead. I'm going to bring in President Green so that he can at least speak a little bit to what Prosecutor Mears spoke to.
Certainly, I'm thankful to the prosecutor for having the Vera Institute come in and analyze these cases that involve resisting police. And it was astonishing, Reverend Alexander, to see that, but to have the actual data there that supports that black people are 4 to 1 more times likely to be arrested for resisting arrest. And probably the better news is that the prosecutor took some steps forward within the last 12 months to help reduce that as he looked at that diversity number, saying, hey, there's a problem here, what can we do differently? And the changes they came up with in terms of reviewing the body cam, Reverend Alexander, before proceeding with prosecuting somebody, I think that was very critical. And as I shared with the attendees, those of us who are black, many times we come from families that are loud, people talk with their hands, etc. And it doesn't mean they're resisting. They could just be asking questions of why, etc. And they may do it in a quote-unquote a loud voice. That does not, in many of our cases who are used to working with black people would say, well, that's not resisting arrest. But if I was a white officer not used to that, maybe they do consider that. And since it's in the discretion of the officer who's writing it up, that's how you can easily get a resisting arrest charge, which then if you get caught up in the system, that becomes complicated, right? Because I got to take off work. I might not have money for an attorney. All this gets extremely messy. So let's go review. Let's make sure that this is a resisting arrest charge that's legitimate. And if it's legitimate, that's one thing. But if it's not legitimate, let's not pursue that and make it difficult for people, especially those who are already economically challenged. So the data was not alarming. It's alarming that it's different that our city would share it, Reverend Alexander, that they would make this public. We as a people know, oh yeah, we're more likely to get arrested for this. But what we need is, to have the data out there, the data saying, okay, this is the real numbers, this is what's really happening. And that's not normal here, but I'm glad the prosecutor did it. And more importantly, that he made changes within his office to ensure that for the real criminals, yes, let's convict. But for those that this really wasn't that case, that we need to work on that. So that's extremely important.
Well, we're going to have to go to our last commercial break. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can call into the radio station. We'll take those phone calls. We've got a lot of comments that are rolling on our Facebook page. That feed is pretty live now. A lot of comments going on there, and we'll come back and we'll finish our conversation. You can call in once again, 317-480-1310. Once again, 317-480-1310. You're listening to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show on AM 1310, 95.1 FM, Indy's Inspiration Station. Well, here we are. We are at the Olivet Missionary Baptist Church on the north side of town, 4141 North High School Road, and we just had an opportunity to hear from Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Mears, and he shared some statistics with us. We've been talking about those statistics, and now we are inviting you, those that have been listening, to call in, kind of share what your thoughts are in regards to the resisting arrest and what it is we need to do. Once again, we've got a lot of information or a lot of comments rather that have been coming on our Facebook page, and we invite you also to call into the station 317-480-1310. Well, we'll take your calls when we come back from our commercial break. Once again, 317-480-1310. You're listening to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show on AM 1310, 95.1 FM Indy's Inspiration Station.
Several months have passed since wildfires tore through Altadena and Pasadena, but for many, recovery has yet to begin. Thousands of families are still without permanent homes. Businesses are gone. Community life remains in pieces. This is not just the aftermath. It's an ongoing emergency. Praise AM 1310 and 95.1 FM proudly support Brotherhood Crusade in rebuilding these communities. For over 50 years, Brotherhood Crusade has empowered underserved families through direct support and long-term recovery services. Your donation to the Wildfire Relief Fund provides food, shelter, mental health support, and the tools families need to start again. Go to brotherhoodcrusade.org to help restore lives and rebuild futures, because recovery takes more than time. It takes all of us.
If you owe the IRS, here's a question. Would you rather deal with IRS liens, wage garnishments, and asset seizures on your own while interest on your unpaid taxes compounds daily, or have an experienced team of tax professionals helping you put an end to that? If you want option 2, the experts at Optima Tax Relief are here ready to help you. Their tax attorneys and licensed professionals step in front of the IRS on your behalf, fighting to put your tax debts to rest. Specializing in taxpayer assistance programs offered by the IRS, their award-winning team has resolved over $1 billion in tax debts for their clients. So, would you rather keep fighting the IRS on your own, or have Optima by your side helping you? If taxes are the problem, let Optima help you with the answers. Call now for a free consultation.
Call 800-569-4435. 800-569-4435. 800-569-4435.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
These days, everyone is looking for ways to live a longer, healthier life. Diet, exercise,
No worries.
mineral supplements, and public transit. Yes, you heard me right.
Okay.
People who live in communities with high-quality public transportation exercise more, live longer, and are generally healthier. Public transit isn't just people riding the bus. It's improving infrastructure, connecting people with jobs, and helping communities all over
This is a cool little
Central
setup you got
Indiana.
here. This is impressive.
boldly moving our city forward. Learn about all the ways Indigo is making your community better at Indigo.
That's impressive. Yeah.
This is Secret Clinical dominating extra stinky stress sweat. And this is regular deodorant. Secret Clinical in a heat wave. Oh, what a beautiful day. This is regular deodorant. Oh, I can't.
Okay, cool.
Secret Clinical with workout sweat. Let's run another marathon. And regular deodorant. How much more? Secret is the goat. Because nothing fights sweat better. Stay pressure under pressure.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. I'm Reverend Tony Alexander, and I'm glad to be joined right now. We're going to be joined by Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Mears, and we're here on the northwest side of town at the Olivet Missionary Baptist Church on the northwest side of town, once again, 4141 North High School Road. And we've been hearing quite a bit, Mr. Prosecutor, with some data that you shared in regards to not just use of force, but also, folks that are being stopped, and then looking at body cam footage and being able to lower numbers when it comes to certain type of stops. Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've kind of experienced in our community is we've seen far too many people who are having what I would consider to just be normal everyday interactions with police officers. And we see people sometimes getting injured. We see people sometimes getting seriously hurt, and a lot of times people end up in the criminal justice system. And our goal and our hope is we want to try to make sure that the criminal justice system, that we're dealing with the people who truly need to be there, the people who pose a threat to public safety. And so we really took a hard look at our resisting law enforcement cases to see where there's some areas where maybe we could make a difference or make some improvements in terms of how we evaluated those cases. And one of the things that stood out to us is if you look at the number of resist cases that we filed here in Indianapolis compared to other jurisdictions around the country, it became very clear to us that we filed a ton of those cases. And we thought it was appropriate to take a closer look at those cases and to see were there any ways that maybe we can make some improvements, reduce the number of cases that would be filed, and hopefully improve those interactions between community and law enforcement in the long run. And so that's something that we've been worked on. We shared the information and data that we found from the report. And one of the things that we're trying to do is we don't want to run from the data or the information. Not all the data necessarily. It certainly pointed to us at the prosecutor's office that we could do a better job on some of these issues. We made some changes to how we screen different cases because we want to make sure that we are treating everybody fairly who has that, not only that encounter with law enforcement, but with the criminal justice system as a whole.
Well, let's go ahead. We got a caller that's on the line. Let's go ahead and bring our caller in. We have Carl Scott.
Oh, hi, Reverend.
Hey there. How you doing?
Deacon Scott. My concern is this. I know sometimes when police pull over people may be exercising their constitutional rights as far as just being quiet and maintaining and not saying anything other than what's necessary. And I've noticed that sometimes police officers seem to get offended and take it personal that you are exercising your constitutional right, which law enforcement should not be getting offended by that. So I'm wondering how we can address that issue.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your call. So, prosecutor, our caller just called in and he said there's a lot of folks that they're being pulled over by law enforcement and they're just using their constitutional rights. However, it seems like the officers get offended by when someone says, I know what my constitutional rights are and I'm asking for certain information. And it seems like once someone is at least wanting to exercise their rights, that law enforcement gets offended. And now we have an issue just because of that fact.
Well, and your rights are only worth something if we stand up and protect those rights, and you have the right to exercise your constitutional rights, and and when you choose to exercise those rights, that is protected. And that's why we kind of made the changes to how we handle the screening process. So if those things occur, we're catching them, before the case is filed. And so that's something that's really important to us because there are too many interactions where people are just trying to maybe let people know, hey, I understand my rights, I know my rights, and I'm going to make sure that they're respected throughout the entire process. And this is a really good opportunity for everybody to have a conversation about what your rights are and what your expectations of the prosecutor's office and what your expectations of law enforcement can be if you're involved in a situation where maybe someone gets pulled over, you have that encounter with law enforcement on the side of the road.
And we also have a comment or a question actually on our Facebook page in the feed. And the question is, and I'm not sure if you can answer this, prosecutor, but how can we get more black police officers on our forces?
I think that's the challenge, but I think that's what's going to really help us turn the tide. And when you have a workforce that reflects the community that you serve, I think it serves the interest of everybody involved. Because then you're going to have more people who are in positions of authority, you're going to have more people who are in a position to influence policy, and most importantly, you're going to have more people who can influence training and make sure that, hey, different people are going to perceive different situations. They're going to have totally different perspectives based on their upbringing, maybe some of the things they've experienced in their own life. And if all of those individuals get the opportunity to contribute to say, well, maybe you don't understand or appreciate this person's perspective, or do you understand how someone in the community could see your comments or what took place this way, that helps people better understand the people that they're trying to serve. And so I think that's a critically important factor. I know it's something that IMPD works on, and I will tell you that there's a lot of police officers. I give a lot of credit to Kendall Adams. He's constantly out in the community trying to get people to really become engaged with the police department and hopefully pursue a career in law enforcement.
Well, a lot of folks are asking questions in regards to the police department, which you are not part of the police department.
That's
so
true.
I want to make sure that we certainly set that disclaimer here. However, there are a lot of folks that are really concerned, and that's why these questions come up. Now, another question that's come up is, how do we look at the process? And that's just the onboarding process. I know I've had many conversations with not just IMPD, but even, the state in regards to what it takes for someone they decide they want to be in law enforcement. They go through training. It can be a whole year before they actually come out of the academy.
And those are all things that we need to make sure are being communicated to the community very clearly. These are going to be the expectations if you want to be a police officer. These are the things that you need to be willing to understand that you're signing up for. But then also, how can we keep people engaged in that process? Because you're right, a lot of people will start the process, but maybe they fall out during the process because they have financial issues or other issues come up that maybe take them away from the process, and then they have to start over. And so I think those are areas that hopefully we can improve on, which will also help improve the diversity of our workforce if we can iron out some of those issues.
All right, we have another caller on the line. We have Imhotep.
Hello. Good afternoon, good evening to you, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call.
Good evening.
Be brief. Prosecutor Mears, appreciate you. I always, like I say, you are progressive. You are really, you and Kim Fox not in Chicago anymore, but my mother is attorney in Chicago, and every time I mention you, the Mears things that Kim Fox was doing, you really are trying to do it right here. So I just want to commend you on that, because I'm 60 years young, and I remember the 90s, and I remember the crime bill, and trying to lock our way out of these problems, and it didn't work. It just didn't work. And you trying different approaches. Sure, people that do violent crime, they have to be punished. But I want your opinion on where are we going to house now. I was down there every day for the Pacers thing. I mean, every game the Pacers had, even on the road and away, there was thousands and tens and 50 and 100,000 people down there. We didn't have one problem. Young people were down there then too. I saw them. I spoke with them. We didn't have one problem. It's in my estimation, from being out in the community, coaching and mentoring, that there are groups of people who make it a point to show up downtown to get the attention, because I'm telling you, that run of the Pacers, that 2-month run, you didn't have a problem except what the police did with the young man with the rubber bullets, and then Miss Whitney Yates said she had a problem too, which no one has talked about that. She had a problem with the police. Other than that, we didn't have any violent crime. What's your opinion of this new curfew proposal, and what place can we have to even take them for parents to come pick them up, or how do we come about fines and all these things like that? Where do you stand on that, sir? Because we've got to make sure that we're not going back to 1994.
Okay.
It didn't work then, it's not going to work now. And thank you for taking my call.
All right. So, prosecutor, our caller, first of all, he gave you accolades for what you're doing, saying that you're doing some creative things when it comes to what you're doing here in Marion County. And he shared some of that stuff, he said, with some other folks that are in other states, and even in other cities such as Chicago. But he had a question for you in regards to, we have the new curfew that's being announced, the extended curfew. His question ultimately is, what can we do? Where can we take these young folks? Okay, you pick them up after curfew. Where can you take them? And how can we be assured that the parents are going to come and even pick them up after you take them to a certain location?
Well, and I think that's what IMPD is struggling with, and that's why you haven't maybe necessarily seen the curfew law enacted in the past, is because there's a lot of logistical challenges to it. The one thing I hope everybody understands about the curfew law is it's not criminal in nature. It gives law enforcement the authority to remove someone from downtown and take them to the Juvenile Justice Center, but individuals can't be sent to jail, for over the long term because there's a curfew violation. It's what's known as a status offense, and so I want everybody to understand the limitations of the curfew law. It's a great tool to remove someone from any given situation, but that's all that you can do under the curfew law. There's not a lot of other things that you can add to the situation, and so it's also, I hope, important for the community to recognize that it's really kind of a temporary solution. It addresses the problem in that particular instance, but it doesn't necessarily address the bigger issue or the bigger problem, which is the issue of having too many young people with guns and too many young people who have access to guns. And I hope we don't lose sight of that issue, because just because kids aren't downtown, if those kids still have access to guns in other parts of our city, that's still a challenge that we all have to deal with, and that's still a challenge that I hope is at the forefront of everybody's minds.
And we really are not talking about that enough, the access to the weapons. I think that needs to be moved up, I'll say, on the totem pole for our discussions. You got some accolades coming, flowing through once again on our Facebook page, saying that you're doing a great job. Let's go ahead and bring in Lori. We got Lori that's been holding.
Hello, Reverend Alexander.
Good evening, Lori.
And good evening, and Ryan, of course. I just had a comment about when you look at the test and all the proceedings that you have to do to be a police officer. I mean, it's very expensive, and I know that is very important. But I take it back to like my role as an administrative assistant. There are parts of my job that the reason I got my job was the years of training that I had. Not necessarily that I have this college background and I passed every test and I did everything that I could possibly do to become the senior administrative assistant. So what about the testing of this? Maybe you have a person of color who can do all of the physical things that need to be done and pass half of the testing, but they might not pass in every testing. But they could be a great police officer. Why does it have to be so hard to get them in the force?
All right. Well, let me pose that question to our prosecutor. I'm not sure if he can answer it, Lori, but the question that we have now, Mr. Prosecutor, is in regards to the testing. To be part of the police department, there's certain aspects. Lori, our caller, said that maybe someone doesn't pass, however, they could be a good individual for the force. And I think that's, you're on a slippery slope there.
You are, and I think there's a lot of ways people can serve, and there's a lot of ways people can serve outside of being a sworn officer. I mean, there's a lot of requirements by law, but that doesn't mean that person, maybe if they don't necessarily satisfy one of the legal requirements, that they couldn't be a great addition to the police department in a civilian capacity or serve the community in a different way, because there's a lot of opportunities that are out there. And so I hope everybody, just because one door closes, there's always another door that's going to open. And so I'm hopeful that for individuals who bring, have that heart for public service and want to make a difference, let's figure out ways that they can serve, whether it's in the police department or other places.
I think that's an excellent point, and I think we lose sight of that so often, that there are many civilian positions that someone could actually serve on. Let's go ahead and we'll bring in, we got Dr. Rush that's on the line. Dr. Rush?
Hey, everybody. Yes, sir. Great meeting today, guys. Great meeting. I enjoyed it. 2 quick points. Number one, Ryan, I know you're in the judiciary, but the nation is moving away from a Madisonian democracy and freedom of individuals to an oligarchy. Supreme Court is. I saw the interim courts today militate against that. So that's a part of the problem we have to fight. So they will interpret very well, very liberally for our police in the instance that you brought up in terms of protecting police rights over individual rights. The second point is that you made today that really stayed with me. We talked about Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott, how he effectively changed the atmosphere there by 42 summer youth camps, 29 literacy camps. But when he got through it, someone asked the question, how do you bring crime down? He said, DEI. You point that out today. But he said the DEI was duly elected incumbents, dutifully elected energetic individuals, and divinely energized interpreters and people that got in, interrupters rather, and people that got in. So the response that he made gave us these results. Because of this, these DEI duly elected incumbent folks are definitely eyeing improvement for the deliberate exclusion and ignoring all of the issues that militates against us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your phone call. Pastor Rush as well as coming here and sharing some thoughts. Now, we do have to kind of wrap up our conversation. So what I'm going to ask the prosecutor is, okay, so we've had this great meeting on tonight. You shared some data. I know there was some call out to, will that data be shared with the public? Will we be able to utilize that data? And then what's next?
So the biggest thing is I want to make sure everybody has access to the information, and I want everybody to be able to kind of take that data and process it however they think is most appropriate. And so absolutely the data is going to be shared. And I also want this to be part of a community conversation. You know, after we kind of did the presentation today, Verus working on focus groups to get information from people about what that data means to them and what we can do to improve our processes at the prosecutor's office. If there's improvement that other areas in the criminal justice system can make, I want to share that information with those other respective stakeholders as well. But it all starts with everybody having access to the data and then having a conversation about what the data means to those people, because I think it's really important that everybody understand that your opinion matters and it has value, and we need to make sure that everybody's perspective is heard.
And Lori's right. She put a comment on our Facebook page that it's going to take all of us to change this, Mr. Prosecutor.
No question.
And each individual has to do their part. And I think that's a perfect way to close. We thank the prosecutor for sharing the information, but then we as a community have to be able to take that information, run with it, and then provide maybe some type of ideas. Here's what needs to be changed. Here's what can be better for our community. So, Ms. Prosecutor, just want to say thank you once again for joining us on tonight, for having this important dialogue, bringing information that we're not used to getting, and we're looking forward to what's next and getting more of that information. So we're getting ready to sign off. I want to thank all of you who were listening, all of you who called in as well, and we'll be, taking that information once we get it, have a opportunity to dive into it. We'll be sharing that and talking a little bit more about that as we go forward. So once again, we want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor, and have a great night. Be blessed. We'll see you on next week.